Hello and welcome to another edition of Foreign Dispatches, the program that takes you around the world in 25 minutes. I'm Layo Olarinde. On the program this week, urgent humanitarian aid finally reaches Gaza after 2 years of war. And in Israel, families rally for the return of all remaining diseased hostages in Gaza. In the Gaza Strip, the ceasefire has allowed UN humanitarians to reach more desperate families with life-saving food and medical aid. Under the ceasefire deal, at least 600 aid trucks are expected to enter daily, but agencies warn that much greater access is urgently needed to prevent famine from spreading.
The ceasefire is bringing a fragile sense of relief to Gaza after 2 years of war as aid groups expand operations under a 60-day plan. The distribution of essential supplies like tents, blankets, and food has begun. The World Food Programme says it has brought in over 6,700 tons of food since the ceasefire took effect on October 11th, enough for nearly 500,000 people for 2 weeks.
The response has been really overwhelming. People are showing up in large numbers, grateful for the efficiency of the delivery of food assistance, as well as the dignified way of people standing in line, quickly getting their food rations, and especially impacting the most vulnerable, the women, female-headed households, the elderly. People are hopeful. There is cautious optimism, but the food that they are receiving, they eat part of it and they ration and keep some of the supplies for emergency because they are not very confident how long the ceasefire will last and what will happen next.
But humanitarian partners warn that these efforts are only a fraction of what's needed to protect vulnerable families ahead of winter. Most Gazans have lost their homes, and thousands of displaced families are now living in overcrowded shelters that lack food, clean water, and basic sanitation.
I returned to Gaza and found shelter here at Al-Shafi'i Mosque. But we are facing harsh living conditions. There is no water, not even for drinking. There is also a lack of food supplies and no job opportunities. We have no one but God.
I built this small tent from scraps I found on the streets to shelter my 2 daughters. I'm terrified of the coming winter. We have nothing, no proper tent or home. I pray someone helps us before the cold arrives.
Meanwhile, only 13 of 36 hospitals and 62 of 179 primary health centers in Gaza remain partially functional.
The doctors are overwhelmed with too many patients. There's no medicine, no treatment, not even in pharmacies. We've been here since morning and we're truly suffering.
My wife, mother, and 2 daughters were killed, and my daughter was badly injured. The hospital has no medicine, no blankets, nothing. We're suffering terribly.
Around 42,000 people in Gaza are living with life-changing injuries and urgently need rehabilitation services.
We continued our services, medical services, even in the very worst and difficult times. And we wish to start doing that, especially in the coming days. There is a lot of demand for our services. We have more than 65 beds in the meantime, and we would like to increase the capacity to 100.
Access to essential health services, including maternal and child care, remains extremely limited. Nearly 94% of hospitals have been damaged or destroyed.
I'm here at Rantisi Hospital shortly after hostilities in Gaza City have ended. As you can see, there is an enormous level of destruction. As well as the hospital being taken out of action, a lot of important equipment like neonatal ventilators, neonatal incubators, for saving the lives of children has also been lost with this destruction. As a result, thousands of children will not have access to critical life-saving medical services and the equipment that the doctors and nurses need to save their lives.
The World Health Organization says it is scaling up medical operations to help restore Gaza's shattered health system.
We have been visiting primary healthcare clinics, specialist hospitals and general hospitals here in the city to understand what rehabilitation services remain for persons with injuries and how WHO can step in to scale this up and help. We have almost 170,000 people with injuries as a result of this war, and the need for physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech and language therapy is huge, so that children and adults with amputations, with spinal cord injuries, with complex fractures can get the help that they need and can return to their families, their activities, and rebuilding their lives here in Gaza. So WHO is committed to responding and to supporting rehabilitation, which is so necessary now and into the future.
As relief operations continue, aid agencies are calling for unimpeded access across Gaza, the entry of medical supplies through all routes, resumption of medical evacuations, and, above all, a lasting and permanent ceasefire.
Meanwhile, scenes of cautious recovery are unfolding amid the devastation. The UN estimates that over 90% of all residential buildings across the Gaza Strip have either been damaged or destroyed. Palestinians now face the immense challenge of rebuilding their lives with few resources and little infrastructure left standing.
In the northern neighborhoods of Gaza City, the sound of hammers and shovels now echoes through streets once filled with explosions. Along Al-Jalaa Street and in Sheikh Radwan, entire residential blocks lie in ruins, homes reduced to rubble, cars crushed under debris, and unexploded ordnance still scattered across the ground. Those who have returned are rebuilding with whatever tools they can find.
Here I want to build a small shelter where we can light a fire for cooking, because we have no cooking gas, no resources, and nothing at all. There is no power or means. We have no other options.
As you can see, we're trying to prepare this space to set up a tent to cover ourselves, me, my children, and my family, until God brings us relief. There's no life in this area, no water, no infrastructure, nothing at all.
According to the United Nations, northern Gaza is among the hardest hit during the 2-year war. Thousands of housing units have been destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Beyond the physical destruction, Gaza is also facing a growing health and environmental crisis. With waste management systems destroyed, dozens of temporary dumping sites have emerged near residential areas, raising fears of disease outbreaks.
So UNDP is also working very actively in solid waste management. It is a major challenge for the rebuilding of Gaza, but also for making sure that health and environmental issues are addressed. How the solid waste is managed at the moment is very problematic, because the two main dumping sites on the outside perimeter of Gaza is not as accessible anymore. So unfortunately, many temporary waste sites have to be created. There's 47 such waste sites, as is behind me. UNDP manages how these sites are set up, so it protects the population. As you can see, unfortunately, internally displaced people are living very close to these sites, but we also rehabilitate it. So we make sure that it is covered and make sure that the diseases cannot spread to the population. It's a very big undertaking, but it's a very big need for the rebuilding efforts as well, and UNDP will continue to stay in this area for as long as it takes.
Despite limited resources, the UN says it is receiving encouraging signs of support from Arab states, European nations, and the United States, all pledging to help Gaza begin its long road to recovery. But for residents, hope lies not in figures or forecasts, but in surviving one more night under makeshift roofs and the faint belief that peace, this time, might hold.
And in Israel, as families bury their loved ones returned from Gaza, frustration is growing over those still missing. Hamas claims it faces difficulty recovering bodies buried under the rubble, a result of damage from months of fighting.
Over the past 2 years, thousands of Israelis have gathered weekly, demanding a ceasefire agreement and the return of all hostages from Gaza. The rallies, led by families of captives, have become a defining image of Israel's wartime landscape, their chants echoing through city squares and streets. Now that all 20 living hostages have been freed, protesters say their mission is not over. They want the bodies of the deceased brought home.
Today, we're in the square for the hostages and fallen still in Gaza. We promise families and ourselves we're here till the last hostage returns.
I'm here so all fallen soldiers, including the last hostage, return to Israel for burial. We won't forget or give up until the last hostage is back. Until then, we're here weekly.
But our mission is not yet complete. 18 of our hostages are still held somewhere in Gaza, and among them our beloved son, Captain Omer Nutra, a U.S. Israeli citizen.
At Jerusalem's Paris Square, families held portraits of their missing loved ones, chanting that no family should be left without closure.
In contradiction to the past many weeks, it wasn't a demonstration, it was a kind of rally. We didn't demonstrate because eventually the Israeli government accepted our what we wanted, and she signed a deal. So we come here to tell the families of the hostages, the death hostages, the hostages that's still in Gaza, that they're not alone, and we stand with them until the last hostage will return to Israel to bury and to have a funeral.
First of all, because we have another 18 hostages to bring back. They are not alive, but they need to be brought back to burial. And it's very, very important that they come back, for their families to put the closure, and for this whole nation to start getting out of, to start our rehab, basically.
The calls continue as Israel's military confirmed 2 more bodies of hostages were handed over by the Red Cross and taken to Tel Aviv for identification on Tuesday. If confirmed, Hamas has returned 15 of 28 deceased hostages under the U.S. brokered ceasefire deal. All 20 living hostages were freed shortly after the truce began earlier this month. Hamas says locating the remaining bodies has been difficult amid the devastation across Gaza, but Israel says that's no excuse for delay. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, visiting Israel, said Washington remains committed to bringing everyone home and ensuring the fragile truce endures.
And look, our warning to Hamas is very straightforward. The terms of the 20-point plan that the president put out there is very clear. It's supported not just by Israel, but by all of our Gulf Arab friends. It's that Hamas has to disarm. It's that Hamas has to actually behave itself, and that Hamas, while all the fighters can be given some sort of clemency, they're not going to be able to kill each other, and they're not going to be able to kill their fellow Palestinians. Now, again, that's going to take a little bit of time. We're talking about how to set up the security and humanitarian apparatus to put all this in place. But right now, where I stand, I feel confident that we're going to be in a place where this peace lasts, where it's durable. And if Hamas doesn't cooperate, then as the President of the United States has said, Hamas is going to be obliterated.
The ceasefire has brought a surge of humanitarian aid into Gaza and a temporary halt in fighting, though deadly clashes over the weekend again tested its limits. Still, for families of the hostages, the message remains the same. They will not stop until every captive is home.
When Foreign Dispatches returns, a glimmer of hope in Sudan, where a children's hospital reopens after 2 years of war in Omdurman. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. We continue in Sudan. Hope is emerging amid chaos. After more than 2 years of closure, a major children's hospital in the Omdurman city has finally reopened. The move comes as fierce fighting continues elsewhere in the country, deepening one of the world's worst humanitarian crises.
After 2 years of war and destruction, the Imam Abdul Rahman Al-Mahdi Children's Hospital in Omdurman has reopened its doors, a rare sign of recovery in conflict-torn Sudan. Doctors have resumed treating children, weighing newborns, and administering vaccinations as families gather in the corridors.
Thank God, now we have doctors available. The clinical nutrition and immunization departments are functioning. All the necessary components for both child and adult care are now accessible.
But restarting operations hasn't been easy. Officials say the hospital faced major obstacles, from power cuts to water shortages, and still suffers from a lack of doctors, nurses, and technicians.
We continue to suffer from a lack of medical personnel, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and lab technicians.
The reopening offers a lifeline for families in Omdurman, a city battered by the ongoing conflict between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces, now in its third year. Since fighting erupted in April 2023, more than 20,000 people have been killed and over 12 million displaced. Across Sudan, the humanitarian crisis is worsening. In North Darfur, thousands continue to flee the besieged city of El Fasher, walking for days in search of safety. The United Nations says over 600,000 displaced people have arrived in the nearby town of Tawila, many exhausted and hungry.
Yesterday, in the town of Tawila, an OCHA team met families who had walked for 4 days to escape the violence in the besieged state capital El Fasher, which is about 50 kilometers or 31 miles away. On Sunday and Monday alone, some 350 families, mostly women, children, and older people, arrived in dire condition, some of them injured along the way. Dozens of young men who fled with the group are still missing, raising serious protection concerns. We and our humanitarian partners have provided food, water, and basic medical care to the new arrivals, but needs far exceed available resources. Tawala now hosts more than 600,000 people displaced from El Fasher and surrounding areas, and many displaced families lack shelter, adequate food, or safe water.
Meanwhile, attacks continue in other parts of the country.
On the ground in El Fasher, repeated attacks continue to imperil civilians. Local sources report that yesterday, heavy shelling struck central parts of the city, endangering thousands of civilians in one of El Fasher's most densely populated areas. Local authorities report that more than 109,000 people are displaced across 127 sites, most lacking food, clean water, and medical care. Several community kitchens shut down last week due to the depletion of supplies.
A drone strike hit the market in Kabkabia, and fresh shelling in El Fasher has left civilians trapped without food, water, or medical care. Even in Khartoum, drones struck near the international airport just a day before it was set to reopen, raising fears over the safety of vital infrastructure. The UN is urging both sides to end hostilities, lift the siege on El Fasher, and allow safe humanitarian access.
On a lighter note, in Rwanda, a new initiative is helping women transform farming into thriving agri-businesses, creating jobs and reshaping rural economies across the continent.
Across Africa, women form the backbone of agriculture, making up more than half of the farming workforce in many countries. Yet, they own less than 15% of agricultural land and often struggle to access credit, training, or fair pay. The International Fund for Agricultural Development says closing this gender gap could boost the global economy by nearly $1 trillion.
Rural women, because of the context in which they live, face barriers that are related, for example, to the social restrictive social norms that exist within their communities that limit their access to opportunities like education, like finance. The positioning of women has been, much lower relatively to men, and so they do not have the same access, to the opportunities that men have. So this is why they still lag behind.
In Rwanda, IFAD and its partners are working to change the narrative through the Integrated Agribusiness Hub. Adelaide, a young agronomist, struggled to find work after graduation until she joined the program.
They taught us how to prepare projects and raise funds. The program helped us. It changed our lives.
With new business and financial skills, she now runs a greenhouse growing eggplants and peppers using smart technology that lets her monitor crops from her phone.
We make it easier for them to enter into these food systems rather than try to go out and go to cities or make even perilous journeys in some other countries to try to cross to other continents. And by doing that, we're giving them an opportunity to really transform their lives, the livelihoods of their community, and really improve their countries moving forward.
The project has trained 1,500 youth and created over 20,000 jobs, half for women, helping them build futures in their own communities. For Adelaide, it's about more than just her own success.
With our greenhouse, we already employ 6 people, but we hope to grow and provide jobs for hundreds more.
The agribusiness hubs have created 59,000 jobs across 9 African countries. This month, IFAD pledged to reach 70 million small-scale farmers by 2030, helping them increase income, productivity, and market access.
And finally, in Vietnam, where a rapid urbanization has led to a mounting waste crisis, one artist is transforming trash into powerful works of art, turning pollution into beauty while inspiring a message of sustainability.
Blending rich imagination with lived experience, Vietnamese artist Nguyen Quoc Dan gives new life to discarded materials, transforming waste into sustainable art that sparks awareness about the environment. His workshop is now a gallery of transformation, filled with breathtaking sculptures made entirely from recycled materials.
Since childhood, I lived on the streets and used scrap metal to make a living. After growing up and working in art, I found what was closest to me, what I was most grateful for, and transformed it into artistic expression.
From twisted wires to rusted car parts, every piece of his work carries a story, a blend of art, memory, and environmental purpose.
From what I learned in art school and from daily life, I've created a regenerative art stream, turning what society throws away into something meaningful again.
This month in Ho Chi Minh City, Quoc Dan unveiled his latest exhibition, Scrap Species, a thought-provoking showcase promoting recycling and environmental protection. Vietnam produces an estimated 60,000 tons of waste every day, much of which ends up in unsanitary landfills. Through his art, Quoc Dan hopes to change that mindset, proving that even the discarded can be reborn with purpose.
And that's the program today. Remember, you can catch all our top stories and more on channelstv.com. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde.